Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're doing something really fascinating. We're going to trace an invisible thread that connects a massive global financial shift directly to your very own kitchen table. It's a story about decisions made oceans away that are quietly impacting your daily life right now, and we're going to break down exactly how it all works. Okay, picture this. You wake up on a completely normal Tuesday, you check your phone, and you see your mortgage rate has suddenly ticked up. Almost instantly, for basically no reason at all. That little red number adds $130 a month to your 30-year payment. And the strangest part? You can't point to a single reason why. I mean, the Federal Reserve didn't hike rates, inflation didn't suddenly spike, and the jobs report was totally boring. So, why did it move? To solve this deeply personal mystery, we actually have to pull back the curtain. We've got to look all the way across the ocean at the staggering, compounding reality of the U.S. national debt. It's this wild system where one completely reasonable decision made by a total stranger at a desk thousands of miles away can just quietly reach right into your pocket. Now, when people talk about the national debt, they always fixate on the headline number. We're talking somewhere around $39 trillion. And let's be real, that number is genuinely absurd. It's so massive it almost stops meaning anything at all. But it's not the sheer size of the debt that's actually dangerous. A giant number just kind of sits there. What's dangerous is the compounding interest machine humming underneath it, just feeding itself day after day.
To really wrap our heads around this, let's shrink that massive number down to a human scale. The interest alone, literally just the rent on money the government already borrowed a long time ago, is now running past $1 trillion a year. That works out to roughly $32,000 every single second. Just think about that. In the time it takes you to blink, the government is borrowing more than most people make in a whole year, purely to pay its interest bill.
And this brings us to a tipping point we've officially crossed, which absolutely blows my mind. Think about the entire U.S. military budget, literally the most expensive military apparatus in human history. Now compare that to the annual debt interest bill. The interest is now the more expensive line item. We are actually paying more for yesterday than we are paying to defend tomorrow.
If you take that massive trillion-dollar interest bill and spread it evenly across the country, it costs every American family roughly $7,000 to $8,000 a year. Now, you're never going to get a physical bill for this in the mail, right? You just pay it in 100 tiny, invisible ways that you'd never trace back. And for years, this didn't really seem to matter, mostly because there was always someone out there willing to buy all that debt.
Which brings us to the first major shift in our story. Section 1, the man in Tokyo and how the floor moved.
For decades, this massive American borrowing machine worked incredibly smoothly, largely thanks to foreign institutions. To understand how, let's personify these foreign buyers as a Japanese fund manager. We'll call him Kenji. Kenji represented what the financial world calls patient money. For his entire career, Japan kept its own interest rates basically at zero. There was literally zero yield to be made at home. So the smartest, safest move he could make was to park his cash in U.S. Treasuries. Kenji, and thousands of buyers just like him, became this invisible, totally rock-solid foundation under the U.S. debt market. They were so steady that everyone just kind of assumed they'd be there forever.
Well, in 2025, Japan finally pulled the plug on that free money experiment. They raised their rates to a 3-decade high. Suddenly, Kenji could actually earn a safe return in his own currency, right there at home, without the headache of converting it. So, making a completely rational business decision, he politely stepped back and just started buying less American debt. Just like that, the invisible floor moved.
But the issue isn't just that these foreign buyers got quieter. It's really about who replaced them. As patient buyers like Kenji, governments playing a super long-term, stable game, stepped back, they were overtaken by nervous money. We're talking hedge funds, leverage traders, private asset managers. This nervous money, it is definitely not patient. It demands much higher returns, and it will absolutely bolt and hit the sell button at the very first sign of a scary headline.
So let's trace the domino effect here and see exactly how this builds into real-world consequences for you. It's a direct chain reaction. Step 1. Reliable foreign buyers leave. Step 2. Because there's less demand, Treasury bond prices drop. Step 3. When bond prices drop, their yields, meaning the interest they pay, have to go up. And finally, Step 4. Banks take that higher yield, stack their own profit margin right on top of it, and boom, your mortgage rate climbs. That right there is your $13 mystery solved.
But hey, the pressure isn't only coming from across the ocean. Let's look at the second pressure point. Section 2, the local squeeze, featuring Rosa and the regional banks. Imagine a local loan officer. Let's call her Rosa. Rosa is facing a quiet, slow-motion crisis right down the street from you.
Her bank is sitting on a mountain of commercial real estate loans. We're talking over $1 trillion industry-wide that is coming due. Now, these loans were originally borrowed years ago when rates were practically zero. But today, rates are dramatically higher. Plus, because office workers haven't fully returned, those big, half-empty office towers are worth far less than they used to be. The math for refinancing these massive balloon payments just fundamentally does not work anymore.
So what exactly do the banks do in this spot? They use a tactic known in the industry as extend and pretend. Instead of just taking the hit and admitting a massive loss on paper, they push the loan deadline a year or two down the road and just pray that economic conditions get better. But here's the catch. These silent, hidden losses tie up the bank's capital. And when regional banks get cautious, they have to say no to new loans for everyday small businesses, and they start denying regular home buyers. The credit totally freezes up right in your hometown.
Okay, so with international buyers backing away on one side and your local bank freezing up on the other, you might seriously be wondering, is the United States headed for a sudden, catastrophic default? You know, the doom mongers out there will eagerly tell you to buy gold, build a bunker, and brace for impact, but let's take a step back and impartially examine the actual reality of sovereign debt.
The absolute most important thing to keep in mind here is that the United States is not Greece. It's not a normal household. The U.S. borrows money in its own currency, the dollar. And because it legally controls that currency, it can literally print the dollars it needs to pay its bills. At the end of the day, that unique power takes a sudden, explosive default completely off the table. Because the government has this printer, we really need to understand the difference between expectation and reality. We aren't facing a Hollywood collapse, a dramatic cinematic explosion where the country just abruptly runs out of money and panics. No, what we are actually experiencing is the actual collapse. It's a slow, quiet, grinding erosion of your money's purchasing power through inflation.
Academics actually have a very polite, sterile name for this. They call it financial repression. It works like this. The government pays its debts right on time, in full, but they do it with dollars that are worth just a little bit less every single year. So the national debt slowly shrinks in real terms, but it's effectively being paid down out of your personal bank account. Your savings melt away just slowly enough that you end up blaming the grocery store for high prices instead of realizing it's the systemic machine at work.
And to make absolutely sure this super delicate system doesn't just freeze up in a panic, the Federal Reserve has quietly built a permanent backstop. Think of it as a literal pawn shop for foreign central banks. Originally, this was just supposed to be a 6-month pandemic emergency tool, but they quietly made it a permanent fixture. It basically allows foreign countries to swap their U.S. treasuries directly for cash behind closed doors, which totally prevents those panic-inducing fire sales in the public markets.
And this brings us to a really powerful realization. This quiet transfer of wealth, that is exactly why your big end-of-year raise feels totally non-existent by the time February rolls around. Your checking account buys less, even though the number in it never dropped. You are the repayment plan. That widening gap between your paycheck and your rent, that is just the invisible interest payment on a national debt you never personally signed for.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought to chew on. This slow-motion shift we've been talking about, the Japanese manager returning home, the local bank pretending everything is fine, the quiet erosion of your dollar, none of this is some wild prediction for the future. It is happening right now. So the question is, will you seek to truly understand how this intricate system moves, or will you just quietly keep funding that invisible thread? The choice is entirely yours. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.